Society is breeding a new kind of criminal. It's also breeding a new kind of cop. Meet Cobra. He does the job nobody wants.
Did you use unnecessary deadly force?
I used everything I had.
Do you know you have an attitude problem?
Yeah, but it's just a little one. You think you would recognize me if you saw me again?
The tall one?
Yeah. The one that wants to kill you.
Do what you have to do to get a lead on this maniac.
And if I find him?
Do what you do best.
Stallone is Cobra, the strong arm of the law.
Hey guys, this is Retrospective Communications. Welcome back to another review, this time of the 1986 action classic, Cobra. Now, technically also, Cobra is also a Christmas film. There's a lot of holiday decorations around. In the beginning, the first time that Cobra shows up and shoots down this thug who's in a department store, wasting some kids and being a general asshole. There's a lot of Christmas decorations up. So it technically qualifies as a Christmas film because it does take place around the holidays, but it's also there's not a lot of Christmassy cheers, a lot of Christmassy imagery. There's a few things here and there that are like the holidays. Invasion USA is more technically of a Christmas movie than Cobra, but it still qualifies because there's Christmas stuff in it, and Lethal Weapon has a lot of Christmas stuff in it too, and The Common Peace has some Christmas stuff. So this is technically a Christmas movie. So I hope you guys had a Merry Christmas. I did. I had a good time spending time with my family, which is the greatest gift of all. And I popped this in on Christmas Eve because I was trying to find unorthodox kind of not so familiar, or well, not necessarily not necessarily the right word, but Christmas films that aren't usually the norm, not normal Christmas movies. And I thought Invasion USA was definitely one of them, and Cobra, because hey, have yourself a Cobra Christmas. But anyway, Cobra is a film that I first saw on VHS at my aunt's house. I liked it. Then and then I got it on DVD with a 2-pack with Tango and Cash. I watched it and liked it then. And then for some reason, when I revisited the film a couple years ago and reviewed it for my channel, I gave it like 3.5 stars, or I was being picky. I don't know what was wrong with me. I had a stick up my ass. I was high. I'm blow. I don't know what was wrong with me, because I watched this film again last night, and it was straight up badass. It was a really fast-paced, fun action movie. And I probably have to say it's my favorite canon film. Yes, it's a canon movie because it was produced by Menem Golan and Yoram Globus. And I think somewhat internationally it was released through Canon. But in America it was released through Warner Brothers. And, but it's still no excuse for it not being mentioned at all in the documentary about canon films. That's a whole nother story. But, yeah, Cobra is a classic. It's an 80s action classic. It's got, one of the best car chases I've seen on film. It's got a very, very fast, quick pace, which I guess wasn't really the original intention, because the original version of the film was a work print supposedly floating around, which I'd love to see, which is like 120 minutes long and has a bunch of extended sequences with other characters, and has more gore, a little bit more violence. So I'd love to see that just for extra scenes, because the only thing I found wrong with this film this time around was that there wasn't more Cobra. That's what I found wrong with it. I'm like, man, I wish there was more Cobra. You know, that's the whole thing. I want more Cobra. And this is a film that when it came out, it kind of got sort of just, it came out, did pretty decently, and then seemed to just be tossed on the wayside, kind of forgotten about for a while. And I don't understand why. It's a film that I think deserves a special edition. With interviews with Stallone, or maybe Brian Thompson, or even Brigitte Nielsen, anybody you can find. The commentary track by George P. Cosmatos on the DVD isn't that great, but I think this movie deserves the special edition treatment. It was not a flop, contrary to what a lot of people have said it was. And a lot of people said it was a flop. A lot of filmmakers, critics, a lot of people regard Cobra as a flop, but it isn't. It was made for $25 million, and at the time that when it came out, it made about $12 million on the opening weekend or on the first day of its release. And at that moment, that was the highest grossing film in Warner Brothers' catalog. And I think the film did really well in home video rentals. And overall, it ended up making $160 million worldwide total gross. So it wasn't a flop. So it being considered a flop is bullshit, and whoever keeps saying it's a flop, they're wrong, because you need to look at the results. It's not a flop. It might not have made as much domestically as Warner Brothers would have hoped, but that's their problem. They decided they were going to make it compete against Top Gun, and then when they realized that they were competing with Top Gun, oh my God, we're competing with Top Gun, so we need to do something about this. They realized that they were competing with Top Gun. So they decided to cut the film up because the first rough cut of the film was over 2 hours long. The closest estimated original running time is 130 minutes. It was then shortened to a roughly 2 hours director's cut, which was intended to be released in theaters. However, after Top Gun became a smash hit, Stallone and Warner Brothers were worried that Cobra, which would premiere the following week, would be overshadowed. So in order to ensure at least one extra screening each day, the movie was heavily re-edited. So Stallone himself actually removed much of the plot and scenes involving characters other than his own, and Warner Brothers also demanded that the more graphic scenes be cut down or removed entirely because they were too intense, and that some action scenes be cut for pacing. When the film was first submitted to the MPAA, the film received an X rating, necessitating even more cuts. And the full extent of the censorship is unknown, but based on director Cosmatos' commentary and several other sources, some of the scenes cut include the first murder victim having her throat cut and hand severed, more dead bodies in the autopsy scene, including lingering shots of naked and mutilated bodies of murdered women, an extended death scene for Ingrid's photographer Dan, in which he is hit several more times with axes and attempts to escape, only to slip on his own blood and fall down in a puddle of it before being finished off with even more hits. The scene in which the night slasher tries to kill Ingrid in the hospital was cut down for pacing and content. The deaths of the janitor and nurse were originally shown on screen, and the scene where the police guard outside Ingrid's room is killed by the night slasher was also cut. A later scene where Cobra mentions the officer's death to Monty was cut to maintain continuity, which as a result made the editing of the scene choppy. It does feel a little bit choppy, I have to admit, but it doesn't really bother me that much. And more scenes of the townspeople being killed during the climax, including a scene in which one is hit in the face with an axe. Two of these death scenes appeared in the 1990s TV versions of the film, but with most of the more graphic shots removed. Graphic close-ups of the night slasher's wound after he's impaled on the hook, and Cobra repeatedly forces the hook deeper into the night slasher as he screams in pain. Besides these cuts, a few scenes in which the night slasher and his gang are killing people were slowed down for a continuity reason, since banded cuts made the editing of the scenes look choppy. So while some of the shootouts were originally in slow motion, were instead played at normal speed in order to cut prolonged death scenes of gang members. Plus, close-ups of many bullet holes were also cut. Eventually, the film received an R rating and was released in theaters with a running time of 84 minutes, approximately 50 minutes shorter than the first assembly cut, and 30 to 40 minutes shorter than the director's cut. Much of David Rash's role, who played the photographer Dan, was cut. In the behind-the-scenes making of documentary available on the DVD/Blu-ray, an additional deleted scene with him and Brigitte Nielsen is shown being filmed. And the car chase between Cobretti and the Night Slasher was originally longer and ended differently. In the theatrical version, Night Slasher shoots at Cobretti's car and causes him to crash into the boat. In the original version, Night Slasher and his driver are the first ones who crash into the boat. Cobretti fails to stop his car in time and crashes into them. The first cut of the film also featured a slightly different version of the climactic confrontation between Night Slasher and Cobretti, where the final version features a longer exchange between the two. In the earlier version, Cobretti appears right after Night Slasher screams, "We are the future," and reiterates his line from the opening scene, "You're the disease, and I'm the cure." And Night Stalker's monologue about the law and Cobretti's duty as a policeman is omitted, and they stare at each other before the stalker attacks Cobretti. And there's a noticeable continuity mistake in the final version. When the stalker jumps on Cobra, there's a fire behind him, which isn't visible during the preceding conversation. This is because Stallone's close-ups were shot later in a different location. Which I found, all this stuff is interesting. And I want to see this cut. I want to see this work print cut. I want to see this uncut version of Cobra. This would be a crying shame that this uncut version of Cobra, with these extra scenes and so forth, would remain on some dusty old VHS in somebody's basement or somewhere in a vault somewhere, getting moldy and crumbling to dust. This is not cool. Cobra doesn't deserve that, and especially since this is a film that even popular directors really enjoy. Nicholas Winding Refn is a huge fan of Cobra, and you can see that in his the opening credits to his film Drive. You see Ryan Gosling, and he's got a matchstick in his mouth. And Nicholas Winding Refn even said that was my homage to Cobra, one of my favorite films. So, he really likes it. It's got a fan base. A lot of people like Cobra. It's being regarded as one of the best action films of the 80s by a lot of people. Some people still think it's crap, but to each their own. Maybe it's not a movie for everybody, but I love it. It's an excellent movie. Forget what the other Mike said 2 years ago. He was full of shit. This is how I honestly feel about Cobra. And I honestly feel Cobra is a kick-ass action classic, and it deserves a better DVD or Blu-ray, and we as fans of Stallone and fans of the action genre deserve to see this unrated cut of the film. And so that's why I hope that someday, against all hope, that somebody will find that work print and either put it up online or restore it and release it to the public, because it would be a crying shame for this longer version of the film to just disappear entirely off the face of the earth. But anyway, that's a pretty interesting sort of, there's extra scenes. There is more Cobra. That's why I said there's something wrong with the film. I need more Cobra, and there is more Cobra, and there's more of this film to be seen, and it's like the mythical, it's like the Holy Grail. It's like you just gotta have faith and hope you'll find it someday. And that really kind of sucks. But anyway, excuse me. Allergies are, being a pain in the ass. But, yeah, it's really lame. I mean, it deserves so much better. But anyway, Cobra was actually a film that kind of the original screenplay is pretty much a retooling of the original screenplay for Beverly Hills Cop. Because originally Beverly Hills Cop was going to star Sylvester Stallone. And he did a lot of rewrites, changed the character's name from Axel Foley to Marion Cobretti, called him a cop called Cobra in the Motor City, but eventually the film, went to Eddie Murphy, and Stallone dropped out, and it was completely changed around, and he took elements from that screenplay to create Cobra. And Cobra is, I have to admit, I would say it's my favorite Stallone character. I love John Spartan, I love Gabe Walker, I really like John Rambo, I really love Rocky Balboa. But Cobra is just a straight up badass. Everything about him screams badass. From his outfit, from the way he carries himself, he's just such a badass. And it's just, you gotta bow down in front of Cobra, because Cobra is just an absolute badass. Marion Cobretti is just one of the best action heroes of all time, in my opinion. One of the best action characters in film. And I would say, yeah, it's my favorite Stallone character. Is it my favorite Stallone film? Right now it is. Right now it gets the edge over Demolition Man, because I just watching this again, I just remembered how much fun this film is. It's, even though it was cut to shreds by the MPAA, and even though there's some noticeable edits, it's still a very enjoyable film, and it's so much fun to watch. It's so entertaining, and it's only like 80 something minutes, and that's really, honestly, I think that works in the film's favor. That it doesn't have extra scenes with those other characters. Instead, it's just this quick, fast-paced, adrenaline-pumping thrill ride. You know, guns are blazing, and one-liners are getting thrown out, and at rapid pace, and it's just there. It never bores you. It's never boring, and it also has another thing in its favor, that it's kind of at points like a slasher film. So it's kind of like Stallone in a slasher movie. And I'm a big fan of slasher movies, and I'm a big fan of horror films. So that's a really cool aspect that this film has. Also has a solid soundtrack. Robert Tepper came back to do a song for this soundtrack called Angel in the City, which he did for this film. And Robert Tepper, maybe a way for him to pay back Stallone for working on Rocky IV, for doing the song No Way Out. You know, there's no easy way out. That's what it is. There's no easy way out. And you also have a lot of fun songs, actually. I mean, it's a pretty underrated soundtrack, I think. The score by Sylvester Stallone, I think, is really solid. Feel the Heat by Jean Beauvoir is a really fun song. Hold On to Your Vision by Gary Wright, I really like. I even warmed up to the duet by 2 into 1 by Bill Medley and Carmen Twilly. Voice of America's Sons, which plays at the end credits with John Cafferty and Beaver Brown Band, is a really awesome, fun song. And yeah, so I really enjoy the soundtrack as well. And I'd have to say, yeah, it's definitely one of my favorite films in the 1980s. It's right up there, and I'd probably put it in my top 10 of my favorite action films somewhere. I really, really enjoy Cobra. It's a film I need to get on Blu-ray. I know, I don't have it in my hands. I have it in my the 2-disc set with Tango and Cash, but I can't really find it right now. And I need to have just a separate copy of Cobra in my hands. I need to get that damn Blu-ray. But anyway, yeah, it's an excellent fucking movie, man. Cobra is a classic. So anyway, the film is directed by George P. Cosmatos, and it's loosely based on a novel, Fair Game, which was written by Apollo Gosling. Now, this is actually a novel that was actually turned into a film called Fair Game years after Cobra, and starring William Baldwin and Cindy Crawford, which is a really terrible movie. Definitely a terrible movie compared to Cobra. Now, the film was made on a $25 million budget. It made $160 million when it came out. It debuted #1 at the box office with a Memorial Day weekend debut of $15.6 million. It went on to gross $160 million, like I mentioned multiple times before, over 6 times its estimated $25 million budget. So that means it made a good amount of money, but it didn't make as much as Rambo First Blood Part 2 did, or Rocky IV, which both had come out the year earlier. And I think that's the kind of success that Warner Brothers was expecting. And if that was the case, they were reaching for the moon, and they were nowhere close to it. Because 1985, the year 1985, is a very rare occurrence where a big name actor starred in not one but 2 sequels, 2 highly anticipated sequels to 2 very popular franchises in 1 year. That does not happen very often. I know you're trying to think like, wait a minute, there's multiple examples, isn't there? Really, there isn't. There's not very many examples of that occurring. It's a rare occurrence. And so audiences took advantage of that, and those movies were the biggest movies of the year of 1985 for good reason. Very highly anticipated sequel in Rambo First Blood Part 2. another highly anticipated sequel in Rocky IV, and they were huge hits. And so Warner Brothers thought, okay, we have the new Stallone film. We are releasing the new Stallone film hot off his biggest year ever, so we're going to get that much money for Cobra. And that's really not what happened. And they shouldn't have expected that. So it did make a good amount of money. It did well. It didn't flop. It just didn't make mega millions like Rocky IV and Rambo First Blood Part 2 did. And I guess Warner Brothers wanted it to do that, but they were reaching for the moon, and that wasn't going to happen. Even though I wish it did, but especially when it has Top Gun nipping at its heels, it was highly unlikely. Because Top Gun went on to be an even bigger grosser and one of the highest grossing films of the year, let alone the entire 1980s. So maybe it was a little bit of competition, and also was a little bit of reaching for the moon. But either way, I think Cobra deserved as much as Top Gun made, and it deserves to make as much as Rocky IV or Rambo First Blood Part 2 did. Because as much as I like Rambo First Blood Part 2, I'd probably say I like Cobra more. But anyway, and that's no slight against Rambo First Blood Part 2. It's another great Stallone film. But this is a movie that I could just watch over and over and over again. There's just so many things about this film works, from the characters, from the writing, from the dialogue, from the soundtrack, from the action sequences. Just a lot of it works. And so the film is directed by George P. Cosmatos, stars Stallone and his then girlfriend Brigitte Nielsen, Reni Santoni, who was, I believe he was also in Dirty Harry. He plays his partner. Sergeant Tony Gonzalez. Andrew Robinson, who played the Scorpio Killer, comes in and plays Detective Monty, who's kind of a sniveling jerk-off, who's always on Cobra's case. Brian Thompson plays a night slasher. He's very intimidating and very creepy. And an interesting sort of thing about the casting is that Brian Thompson auditioned 7 times before he was hired. And on the 4th audition, he met Stallone, who thought that Thompson was too nice to play the night slasher. But after a screen test, he immediately got the job. Thompson also repeatedly sought Stallone's advice about how to play the night slasher, including questions about his background and personal motivations, but Stallone showed no interest in the subject and told Thompson that the character was simply evil. And an unfortunate surprise for Thompson, after filming was completed, director Cosmatos unexpectedly told him, "You could have been good if you had listened to me." And during filming, originally the movie was to be filmed in Seattle, climaxing with a motorcycle chase on a ferry between the islands. Even though everything was prepared to start filming, the final theatrical version of the scene at night, Stallone demanded for the ending to be changed because of the mosquito problem at the time, which would have made the nighttime filming very difficult to endure. It ended up working out in the end, because I think it actually was a little bit more badass with, with the chase scene, with just him in the back of the truck shooting these guys. And at one point during filming, Stallone complained to cinematographer Rick Waite that they were falling behind and that he needed to push his crew to work harder. Waite responded by telling Stallone the delays were due to his fooling around with Brigitte Nielsen and showing off for his bodyguards. Ooh! Although Stallone was shocked that somebody would talk to him that way, he cleaned up his act and behaved more professionally. Although he returned to his old egocentric behavior a few weeks later. Waite later said in an interview that despite his huge ego, Stallone had a great sense of humor. He also confirmed a rumor that Stallone was a true director of the film, calling George P. Cosmatos a good producer but a bad director. Which I don't know if I don't really agree with that, because I like George P. Cosmatos. He's not a bad director, because if you've seen Of Unknown Origin, you know he's not a bad director. So I don't think he's that bad of a director. I disagree with those criticisms. He might not be the greatest director ever, but he's not one of the worst. For the Night Slasher's monologue in the lead of the final fight, Brian Thompson did the scene with the script girl standing in for Stallone, who was busy watching a basketball game on TV. And the custom 1950 Mercury driven by Cobra was actually owned by Sylvester Stallone. The studio produced stunt doubles of the car for use in some of the action sequences, such as the jump from the second floor of the parking garage. And the knife used by the Night Slasher was made for the film by knife designer Herman Schneider. Sylvester Stallone asked Schneider to create a knife that audiences would never forget. I've never forgotten that knife. Ever since I first saw that knife, I'm like, that is a very memorable knife. That's really creepy, sadistic-looking knife with the spikes on the end of it, and the skull and everything. It totally looked like something that somebody like the Night Slasher would wield. Now, another story about Stallone's car. This is after the fact, after the film came out. Years after the film came out. Stallone's car kind of went missing. It's like, where's my car? And, you know, he found the Awesome 50 car. He found it. Somebody was selling it online or somewhere. And so Stallone called him, you know, it was like, that's my car. You have my car. I want my car back. And so eventually he did end up getting his car back. But it's kind of funny because somebody stole his car and then tried to sell it. And then in the open. And of course Stallone, you know, kept an eye on it because that's his car. So ultimately he did get his car back. But I just thought it was kind of a funny little bit of trivia that relates to that car. Now, the film has a very simple plot. And it just makes the films, you know, all the more enjoyable because it's straightforward. Stallone plays this character named Marin Cobretti, and he's a member of the Zombie Squad, which is basically the police force that you call when, you know, procedures are not going to be followed anymore. They're the guys you call to just take the guy down. They're the guys you call to take down the bad guys. And fuck the protocol, pretty much. Take them down. You're not arresting them. You call these guys to kill the bad guys. And so that's what they, you know, basically do the dirty work. And so that's what happens in the beginning of the film. I mean, the beginning of the movie, you have some really nice cinematography by Rick Waite. And I always love the way the film opens up. And especially, I love this monologue that Stallone has where he starts out and he's like, talking about this little monologue. And he's like, in America, there's a burglary every 11 seconds, an armed robbery every 65 seconds, a violent crime every 25 seconds, a murder every 24 minutes, and 250 rapes a day. I just, it's very sinister and unique way to open up the film. And I even love the way the opening titles are set up. I love the red lighting that's used. And you introduced to the Night Slasher and his crew of this new world. You know, these crazy psychos who want to, you know, basically want to bring about this new world by killing a bunch of people. It's, you know, it's not a super complex plot. There's a bunch of crazy psychos that need to be put down by the Cobra. Because crime is a disease. And I'm the cure. But anyway, so the first, you know, opening, you know, after you have the Night Slasher's crew, they start banging their axes and shit. An armed gunman causes a bunch of ruckus at a department store, shooting things up, being a general asshole, and it's up to Cobra to stop him. And when he shows up in his car, his awesome car, and gets out of it, and he's got the matchstick in his mouth and the sunglasses. It's just one of the most badass entrances ever. And he goes into the department store, and then he has this dialogue with the guy, which there's so many great lines in this. He has this dialogue with this guy on a CB radio it's in the store, and he's like, you know, he's talking on the radio, you know, they're talking, you know, the intercom, and he's like, "Hey, dirtbag. You're a lousy shot. I don't like lousy shots. You wasted a kid. You ain't nothing. Now I think it's time to waste you." And of course, that's what he did. He goes in, goes after him, and even more badass lines of dialogue. The guy's fucking with Stallone, and he's like, "Get back! I got a bomb here. I'll blow this whole place up." "Go ahead. I don't shop here." Alright. Just relax, amigo. You want to talk? We'll talk. I'm a sucker for great conversation. "I don't want to talk to you. Now bring in the television cameras in here now. Come on, bring them in." "Can't do that." "Why?" "I don't deal with psychos. I put them away." "I ain't no psycho, man. I'm a hero. You're looking at a fucking hunter. I'm the hero of the new world." "You're a disease. And I'm the cure." It's like, die! And then Cobra just throws a knife at his ass. And they just drop it and then just shoots the guy. Takes 5 shots, shoots him right in the chest. and then spins the gun around, puts it right in his, puts it back in his pants, and you see like the zoom in on the Cobra on his gun, and you're like, this is just badass. This is so awesome. Fucking shot the guy, and then Andrew Robinson's being a dick, trying to get with him, and all kinds of shit. And there's a reporter guy who's giving him shit too. It's like, these people have rights. You got it. And then Cobra grabs the reporter, drags him up to one of the people who got shot, lifts up the sheet over him and says, he just puts his head over there. You think this guy should have rights, huh? You think he should have rights now? Get out of here. Anyway, there's so many awesome moments in this movie. And there's so many, just a lot of stuff. But anyway, so, of course, after he takes, the body's removed by the supermarket, Cobretti's admonished by Detective Monty, Andrew Robinson for his disregard for police procedures and protocols, harassed by reporters. He should, admonishes them for failing to put safety of potential victims first. Little these people know that the hostage crisis is just one of a string of recent and seemingly unconnected acts of violence and murder that have broken loose in Los Angeles, perpetrated by the same, crazy group of the New Order. After witnessing several individuals going on a spree killing, including the New World Order leader, identified as the Night Slasher, played by Brian Thompson, model Ingrid Knudsen becomes the group's main target due to her own being the only living witness to their crimes. After a failed attempt on her by the group, which of course before this, you get to see the montage scene of Stallone looking around looking for clues with the song "Angel of the City." But I really like the song, and I have fun with the scene. But I have to admit, it's so 80s, and like not even the best part. I mean, I love the song and the stuff with Stallone looking for. I'm just talking about the outfits that Brigitte Nielsen is wearing are laughable. The way that she's just doing her modeling in front of just a bunch of robots. It's supposed to be sexy. I don't know what the hell's going on, but I love it anyway. But I just have to admit, it's just so ridiculous. I have to point that out because it's ridiculous. It's just like, what's next? Is she going to start posing in front of, spreading her legs for Robbie the robot? It's absurd, but it works. It's just another way to make the film entertaining. So she ends up being put in protective custody of Cobretti and his partner, Sergeant Tony Gonzalez. And I always remember a lot of these guys as, I love Stallone and, Cobretti and Gonzalez's dialogue that have between each other, Reni Santoni and Sylvester Stallone. They have this nice repertoire with each other. And I always remember this stuff where it's like, you know what your problem is? You're too violent. It was like, what? It was like, yeah, it's probably all that sugar you've been eating. All that junk food crap. You know what you should do? You should try natural. You should try maybe some prunes, maybe some raisins. How about some fish? Fish and rice. I just like their little, their back and forth. And then even there's a fun line later where, of course, these police guys are giving Cobra more shit, and this one guy comes up to him and is like, you know what, Cobretti? You have a serious attitude problem. And Cobra's like, you know what? I do. But it's a little one. It's a little one. You're right. But it's a little one. I always remember that line. It's a lot of fun. It's like, it's a serious attitude problem. Yeah, but it's just a little one. But anyway, there's a lot of fun stuff like that. And so, Brigitte Nielsen is put under his protective custody. He ends up, they end up having dinner one time at a bar. And I remember the little bits that they have there. Like, she's pouring ketchup all over fries. And she's pouring so much on it that Stallone's like, life preserver for those fries. It's just so over the, these type of lines are just like, hey, your fries are drowning. I just thought that was pretty funny. It's like, your fries are drowning. Life preserver. And then, you know, there's all this kind of just random sort of, you know, do you have a life preserver? Why? Because your fries are drowning. And then there's other stuff where there's this this Vato guy who's like in Stallone's parking spot, and he goes in, and the guy's giving him shit, and he's like smoking, he's being a dick, and Cobra-He's all like, you know what's bad for your health? What? What? Me. And he grabs a cigarette from his mouth, and then you need a new image. And then he rips his shirt. He walks away with a smirk on his face. And then later in the film, he goes back to get his parking spot again, and the guy, the Vato guy and his gangbangers actually drive up further so he can park. And they're like, hey, that's it. You know, this is pretty funny. But yeah, there's just a lot of stuff. I mean, that's why my mind is, I'm kind of slow here, like trying to get my gears going, because there's so many fun lines in this. When he's hanging out with Brigitte Nielsen, and they're looking at this store, this little corner store or whatever, and Gonzalez told Brigitte Nielsen, Ingrid, that you know what Cobra-He's first name was, and he was Marion. It's like, I've always wanted like a tougher name, you know, like Alice, which is definitely a reference probably to Alice Cooper. And so yeah, there's just a lot of fun lines. So anyway, so of course, before she even got put into custody, there was really some nice tense, protective custody. There's some nice tense scenes in the hospital where the Night Slasher's going after her. You can tell stuff was edited out, but I still really like it. And there's a little fisticuff fight, little fun fight between Stallone and a bunch of thugs who were trying to, you know, fuck with Stallone at his apartment. And then you get to you know, before they even get into before they even get away, there's a really, really fun car chase, which, you know, I love this car chase. It's a really exciting, fun car chase with a good amount of gunplay and a good stunt work. Really amazing, excellent stunt work. I really love the scenes where they're going on these hills and they keep going up and down and up and down and up and down and flying up in the air. It's a lot of fun. It's really a lot of fun. And anyway, so of course they deal with the car chase or whatever. And then, of course, then that leads to, you know, his car gets smashed up, so he has to get a new one, and they end up, pretty much they end up going and, you know, to find a hotel somewhere, and all the while there's, you know, Stallone has this, he's thinking that there's somebody on the inside who's, you know, in on this, inside the police department. And he even gets angry with some of these guys, you know, some of the cops, you know, and I like this line of dialogue that he has, and he has a point where he's all like, as long as we play by these bullshit rules and the killer doesn't, we're going to lose. It is true. You know, as long as we play by these bullshit rules, the killer doesn't, we're going to lose. So he wants to stop the killer, but if we keep playing by these fucking rules and by the book, we're not going to get the killer. And so the film pretty much had, you know, they stay in the hotel. Cobra knows there's something wrong. He suspects that the one chick who's with them is in on it. His suspicions are right, and he's loaded up his guns, and he's ready, and the killers come in, and by daybreak, and they start shooting at him. He blows them away through the windows. I always remember the scene where killer's like up in tie, he's trying to get through the skylight. Stallone just grabs the gun and shoots them through the skylight. And there's just a lot of just so much gunplay in this climax. It's just so much fun. And then he guns down all these guys on these motorcycles, and they keep coming after him. And, you know, he eventually gets out with Ingrid away from these guys. His partner gets shot, but he's not dead, because he shows up later and says that he wants some gummy bears. So he's still alive. And which I like that. I'm glad that he didn't get shot. And so then they get in this chase where these guys on the motorcycles, the thugs, and the rest of the New World, are chasing after Cobra and Ingrid, and Cobra is back in the back of Stallone's in the back of the truck, shooting them with his machine gun, which I don't even know it's really a machine gun. It's like a Uzi. It's a rifle, assault rifle or something. And it's a really cool gun, too, with a laser sight. It's shooting all these guys. It's just... You gotta see it. I mean, you just imagine it in your head. Stallone in the back of a truck, just mowing down bad guy after bad guy after bad guy is heaven. It's heaven for me. And then, of course, the truck gets disabled, so he has to get out with Ingrid. It tells him that he runs through an orange grove or a lemon grove and fucks up more bad guys, shoots them, kills one guy with a knife, goes at, you know. It just keeps going, and then he ends up, and then you get to the climax where Stallone goes to this foundry, and he's wasted almost the entire New Order, so there's only like a few of them left, and there's this one guy who he like douses in gasoline, and before he lights his matchstick to burn him alive, he says this badass one-liner. He's like, "You have the right to remain silent." Drops the match and lights his ass on fire, which makes me really think that Stallone, he would have been a great Judge Dredd if he just gave the performance that he did for Cobra in the 1995 Judge Dredd film and kept his helmet on the entire time. We might have had a really badass Judge Dredd movie, which might have been on par with Carl Urban's film. But no, instead he decided to do something completely different that was completely against the character. But he should have just been Cobra as Dredd, and it would have worked perfectly. He even had the voice down and everything. It just was... Judge Dredd with Stallone is such a missed opportunity, especially when you watch this film and you're like, man, that movie could have been so much better if he just was Cobra as Dredd. Dredd in many ways is like Cobra. Why didn't he do that? I don't know what Stallone was thinking. But, hey... it is what it is, but it doesn't change the fact that it sucks. Would have been a much better movie if Stallone just decided to take his approach for Cobra and used it for Judge Dredd instead of whatever the hell he decided to use. But anyway, lights the dude on fire, shoots the bitch who, he was a dirty cop, and the Night Slasher tries to go after Ingrid. And Stallone, gets him away from her, shoots a gun at him, but he doesn't. Of course, it's a scatter shot to get him away from her. And then they get to the showdown, and the Night Slasher has this speech, and he's all like talking about, about his plan. He's like, "You won't do it, pig. You won't shoot. Murder's against the law. You have to take me in if you can." This is. And, of course, the whole thing where it's like, "You want to go to hell, huh? Huh, pig? You want to go to hell with me?" This continues with these, lines. It just is very intimidating. It's like, "You want to go to hell? Huh, pig? You want to go to hell with me?" Doesn't matter, does it? We are the hunters. We kill the weak so the strong survive. Can't stop the new world. Your filthy society will never get rid of people like us. It's breeding them. We are the future." And then Stallone, Cobra's like, "No. You're history." It's like, "No. You're history." So, and he tries to shoot him, but that's when you find out that the fucking dirty cop bitch is still alive, and so she tries to choke Cobra, gets a chain off her, shoots her. Actually, Night Slasher shoots her, trying to kill Cobra. And then you get one of the most badass one-liners I've ever, honestly, in cinema. And I just love the way the scene is shot. I love this scene is just so badass. And so this is when we repeat a line from earlier where Brian Thompson is saying, Stallone's got the gun on him, and he's like, "You won't do it, pig. You won't shoot. Murder is against the law. You have to take me in, if you can." And then Stallone just stares at him, and they exchange stares. And then Stallone has this just badass one-liner. And before I do it justice, I gotta get a little drink here. This is just one of my favorite lines of all time, really. "This is where the law stops, and I start. Sucker." And then he just goes after him, and they get in a nice little fisticuff with each other. A little bit back and forth. Stallone gets a bunch of punches into Night Slasher's face, and then lifts him up and just fucking impales his ass on this, it's like a conveyor belt, sort of like a hook thing, and just impales his ass on it, and it's awesome. And then he just sends the guy into, you know, burning. It was like a large roaming hook. So he impales him on this hook, and, you know, sends him screaming basically into hell. He says, "You want to go to hell, pig?" "Yeah." You know, "But I'm not the one that's going to hell. You are." So sends his ass into the fucking furnace, and he gets engulfed in flame. And, you know, it's just so fucking... It's brutal, and it's just... It's visceral, and it's just so satisfying. It's one of the most satisfying deaths in action film history for a villain, in my opinion. It's just stab his ass beat his ass for a little bit, say an awesome one-liner, and then like just fucking shove his ass, stab his ass on a hook and send him into the incinerator. Just like, I had to clap. I was clapping it, and you know. And then of course Cobra's killed the whole New Order. Fucking burned the Night Slasher to a crisp. Gets back with Brigitte Nielsen. Finds out his partner Gonzalez is still alive. That's where he has, you know, wants some gummy bears. Monty is trying to be kind of, he's like, "Cobretti, no hard feelings. You kind of overdid it around here. I personally would have looked for a more subtle solution, but that's not your style. No hard feelings." And then Cobra shakes his hand, and then he just punches him right in the face. Because he deserved it. It was an awesome bit of, you know, because earlier he's giving him so much shit, and even, you know, even his friend was getting on him, you know, saying, you know, even his friend was getting on him. He was like, "You know, when this is over, I'd like to celebrate by punching a hole in Monty's chest." And that's pretty much what Cobra did. He punched him right in the face. So he you know, he celebrated. Then he gets on the back of this bike with Brigitte Nielsen, rides off, and John Cafferty and the Beaver Brown Band song "Voice of America's Sons" plays in the background, and then movie's over. And I want to watch it again, and I want to see more Cobra. So I don't really know what to say about Cobra. I've said pretty much all there is to be said about the film. It's a 45-something minute review. I was expecting it to be this long, but this is not just a normal review. This is a review / retrospective. This is a film that deserves it. That deserves a long, in-depth review like this. It's such a fucking badass movie, and I really don't know what to say about the Cobra except as a rate out of 5 stars. 5 out of 5. 2 thumbs up. The critics were full of shit. 13% on Rotten Tomatoes? What the fuck is that? 5.5 on IMDb? Way too low. Way too goddamn low for this movie. And it's a film that, like Roger Ebert said, it was just a bunch of action tropes. You know, it was generic or whatever. So what? It's entertaining. It's a blast. It is so much fun to watch. It goes by so quick. It's very memorable and in an awesome, badass way. I mean, if you're a fan of 80s action, you're gonna, you know, I don't see how you cannot enjoy Cobra. But, you know, to each their own. Man, this is I don't think I should have to defend this film. It's fucking Cobra. I should not have to defend Cobra, but seems like it. I mean, 13% on Rotten Tomatoes, I guess says I do. 5.5 on IMDb, which is way too fucking low. I guess I might this is technically me defending Cobra. It's a great film. It's a great action movie. It goes by at a really quick pace. It's got some really standout action sequences. It's got one of the most badass movie characters in film history. It's got good performances by the cast. It's well written. It's got some fun. It's got some really fun lines, a dialogue. It's a lot of fun to watch. The direction, whoever directed it, Stallone or Cosmatos, is well done. The cinematography is great. The score is really solid by Sylvester Stallone. It's got a good choice of music. And it's also got this unique feel of a slasher film at points starring Stallone, which is a really cool thing. And I'd love to actually see another movie like that with Stallone. Maybe it could be Cobra 2. I'd be all for Cobra 2. But maybe not, because Stallone, I don't know if I could trust him nowadays. after Expendables 3 and all these other shitty movies he's done. But I'd be willing to give it a chance, at least, because it would be more Cobra, and I would love to see more Cobra. So this film deserves better attention. This film deserves a better DVD and a Blu-ray. This film deserves the work print of the film, the uncut film version of the film deserves to be released. And yeah, this film deserves a lot more accolades, in my opinion. And not just from Stallone fans. It's a really, really great film for what it is. And it's an even more of an amazing feat considering how much was cut out of the film from, you know, the original cut. But anyway, I really don't know what to say about Cobra except thank you for watching my review, and I will see you guys later. See ya.